Okay. Gibraltar. This will be Gibraltar and Morocco. Um, yeah, it was cool to get into Gibraltar where they speak English. I went into some bar and it was like, Gibraltar's an amazing place because it's like this big rock, and then the bottom of the rock, they have a town. It's like England. So I went there in some place, and sure enough, it was England. Like English people, English breakfast, same food as when I was in England, same exact culture. It was really cool. It was really refreshing for me. I went into the supermarket and I bought food there, and all the ladies are dressed in the bonnets, um, and I rode up a hill, really steep up a hill, and I looked over because I was wanted to find a place to camp out, and I looked in and I saw some like I went into a cave. It was like a 500-year-old cave that like had walls built up around it, like somebody had built there, and I went in and it rained that night too, just like the night before, but I didn't get wet at all, even though on the top of the cave I could see the sky. I was just under the part where the rain couldn't get to me, and so I had that whole cave to myself. And so I was in Gibraltar for like 4 days, I think, just touring it, and I'd just sleep in my cave that I had to myself. It was halfway up the hill. And Gibraltar was cool because there's these roads that I'd ride straight up, and I went into some cavern, the Gibraltar Cavern, um, where they had stalactites and stalagmites everywhere, and a amphitheater inside where they would do performances. It's pretty. And then I went on the top of the town towards the north, towards the south, and they'd have this huge cannon right on the top, pointing south, that I guess they used to protect Gibraltar from, and then they could shoot down any boat that went in and out of the Straits of Gibraltar. You could look over and you could see like the 8 miles between Spain and Africa. Um, and you know, that cannon, I could tell, could shoot anywhere from up there. It must have been fun for the people who manned that thing and shot boats. But and then I went on the north, and there was some lookout that looked over some Moorish castle that was built in like 600 or something, or 1,000 years old or something like that. That I did a tour of, that had some great, beautiful mosaics. And it was round, not so big, but from above I saw. I was on some lookout, and there were all these monkeys there that would like jump on your head and like scratch your head, and I took photos of them. They were cute because they were all over the place. And then on the very top of the town of the Gibraltar, on the rock, there was like sheer cliffs on the eastern side that went all the way down. And there was another like ruins of a castle up there, which would have been a beautiful castle, like literally right on the top of the mountain, on the edge of the cliff. Pretty crazy. And the roads were pretty steep. And then I rode down. I did a tour of this north side, which they defended Gibraltar from the Spanish. I guess they had some like 2 year siege of it. That then they got like scurvy, but they managed to keep the island. At the time, it was an island. Right now, they filled in the area with grass, and now it's an airport. But inside there was like, I guess they burrowed tunnels, and so it was like the most fortified castle you've ever seen in your life, because it's like way up, and there's these tunnels with all these little holes that they put the cannons through. It was totally totally defensible because it was inside of a rock. They could shoot cannons at it and you wouldn't destroy it. You'd never be able to crumble it down. So, and it was really big too, really intricate, and it was pretty crazy to watch, to do the tour of. If you go anywhere, go to Gibraltar. It's pretty amazing. And uh, and then I went down and I checked out the beach and hung out on the beach for a little bit, and did some suntan, and then rode down on the eastern side of the island down to the end. And there were some more like, I guess, buildings and stuff. And then I came back, and then I went into Morocco. I took the boat in there, and that was kind of exciting to go into a new country. Going into Morocco was interesting, and I went to change the money, but I was stupid, and I didn't count the money in front of the guy, and I gave it to him, and I told him how much it was, and then he gave me the wrong amount, but I couldn't be like prove to him. So I was like, okay, I gotta watch myself around these people. And then I went into some like small hotel room and stayed there, and then I rode down, and that was like the first third world country I'd been to, so it was kind of freaky. It's like totally like abandoned, kind of looked like a bombed out like well, it was third world. It looked like Armageddon had struck. Like just nobody in there, nobody in the streets. But there's apartment buildings, and the streets are like dirt and just just dirt and trash and stuff, and it's kind of weird. But I went to a bike shop that was like on a hole in the wall, and I got something there, and And I started to ride south, and I noticed that all the people there spoke English and were really friendly. They'd come up to me and talk to me in my language really well. And I rode down, and I was staying in hotels though the whole time. There was only like $3 a night, and but people like were really like, I was like standing out like a sore thumb there. People would like run after me, like calling after me, like stop, hey, come back. And I went down to, I stayed in a hotel in a Rabat in a hotel room for like $8, but I had like a nice hotel room. Like I could get actually a nice hotel room for $8. It was cool, like nice furniture and everything. I kind of felt like I was like living it up. And I saw weird scenes though. Like some guy like hit some guy or something in a car, and I looked down, and he was like sitting down, looking up, like yelling at each other for like 20 minutes. But and then I was riding down the road, and there was a bunch of guys riding motorbikes, but they were like cheap moped type motorbikes, so I could ride fast enough to draft off of them. And they didn't even notice I was drafting off of them. But it was just like the right speed, so it was awesome, and I could like barely hold on to them. We're going like 35 miles an hour or something like that. And I'm just like, and then I went through Casablanca, and that was kind of sketchy because I was like all these people like running after me. It was really crowded, and so I'd ride down the sidewalk. I'd have to ride down the sidewalk to the next red light because there were so many motorcycles in the road, clogging up the road. But the motorcycles wouldn't ride down the sidewalk, but I did. I think some of them did though. And then I went down, and I went to some town that had an old castle there built by the French. It was right on the edge. I can't remember where it was. It was like 100 miles south of Rabat. It was as far down south as I went. But I went into a hotel, and there was some girl who was like, "Oh, come over to visit my house." So I went over to her house, and she was living with her brother and her sister in some like 2-bedroom, really basic house in some like where all the buildings, all the rooms, apartments. Well, it wasn't a house; it was an apartment inside of a big building. And they had dirt. All the roads were dirt, and there were no cars going through the roads, just pedestrians. So it was really quaint and peaceful and nice. And they had these tiny little stores where you would get these weird, food they had. And so I hung out with them for a couple days, and I think she was like thought that I'd be like marry her and take her back to America. Like every single Moroccan I met wanted me to take him back to America. And at one point, I thought some guy was about to mug me, and so I thought he said like, "Give me your money" or something. So I was like, "Oh, you want to go to America?" So I ended up talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, cool," and he gave me his like address and everything, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll call you. I'll help you get to America." But anyway, I was staying with them for a couple days. I think it was like 2 nights, and she actually like kissed me. I'm like, "I'm not gonna marry you," and she's like, "Oh, okay," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well, thanks for letting me sleep in like the only bed in the whole house." But the next day I went down to the beach with her and her brother, and it was a beautiful beach. Lots of sand. The sand came back really far. It was like Venice Beach. And really big waves too. Great surfing, and I tried to tell them they should try to make surfboards and get into surfing, but they didn't really have much to say. They were kind of, I guess, just kind of boring and bored. So I left, and I was kind of sick of Morocco. It was kind of the first. I think this happens to a lot of people when you go to a third world country. You kind of get like a little bit, kind of like it's not fun. It's just the poverty kind of drags you down. So I figured, okay, I'm just gonna take the bus back to Europe. I want to see Italy because I took Latin for 3 years in high school, and I knew all about Rome, and I wanted to see Rome and Italy and all that. So they escorted me to a taxi place, and even rode with the taxi with me to the next town over where I could get a bus. And they were in the bus, and they like waved me goodbye, and I took the bus back to Casablanca, and I was in Casablanca, and took the bus from Casablanca back to Gibraltar. And then I got to Gibraltar and stayed in a hostel that time. I decided to just mail my bike home. It was like $150, and I mailed my bike home. I got sick. That's right. When I was in Gibraltar and Morocco, I got sick in that town, and because I was riding too much. I think I was over riding, and I wanted to just start taking the bus and the train and stuff. So mailed the bike back, and when I got home, it actually got bent, but I was able to rebend it. But I stayed in the hostel, and that was the first time I'd stayed in a hotel other than the time in Madrid, and that was interesting. Saw a movie with some English guy. And then I went through Spain, and I guess that'll be the next video.